Hello and welcome back to the Now We Know Show, the show where we discuss a topic of interest and by the end we will have learned something new and hopefully you will too. I'm Zach.
I'm Buzz.
And I'm Jack.
Jack's back!
No way! This is the first episode this year that you've been in.
2023.
Welcome back, Jack.
Wow, it's been a whole
to the Now
year
We Know
since
Show.
you've been on the Now We Know
Yeah,
Show
so
podcast.
you were last with us in 2022.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
been a long year. I'm hoping to be back on more Now We Know shows going forward.
Excellent.
So,
Fantastic.
for my fan club out there.
Yay!
Yes!
Jack
Jack's
Now We Know
back.
Show fan club.
Jack's back fan club.
So, in this week's episode, we're going to be doing it all about Devonshire Folklore.
Ah, it's another folklore one.
Ooh.
If you enjoy the Now We Know Show podcast, why not support Zak Wylde Productions on our Patreon page? Become an official ZWP patron for as little as £1 a month for exclusive early access to all our latest episodes, videos, behind the scenes, updates and more. So, before we get into Devonshire Folklore, it's time for, you guessed it, Word of the Week.
Word of the week.
Word of the week.
Word of the week. Word of the week.
Jack.
Come on, Jack. You
You
got
got
it.
This is my first word of the week. I
Oh,
don't know.
really?
Yes,
oh
I
my
don't know
god.
what
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah.
This is a new format for me.
Anyway, so, the Word of the Week is all about old English words we don't use anymore. All you have to do is write down what you think it means in the comments, and we will then reveal what it means at the end of the episode, so you can find out if you got it right.
Ooh, so there we go, Jack. You can tell us what it is.
So, the word of the week this week
Yep.
is groke.
Groke.
Spelt Groke. Groke.
Right. The interesting thing is about not just knowing what the word means is how do you fit it into a sentence? You know, I'm feeling a bit groke today. Or,
So-
I found a large groke. On...
I was going to say.
We can save this. We can save this
I think
till the
you
end
need
of the
to see doctor
podcast.
about your groke.
We can find out what groke means at the end of the podcast.
An alarming amount of groke.
It can't take you anywhere.
All right, groke. Okay, well, I have predictions what that could mean, but
Okay.
We'll save that till the end.
Right, okay, back to Devonshire Folklore.
So, we're going to do something a little bit different this week. We're going to have the Now We Know Show flashback right now.
Ooh.
So,
What is the flashback, Zach?
cast your minds back to episode 11 of the Now We Know Show podcast.
flashback sound effect.
Yes. We did it all about Hertfordshire folklore.
We did.
Yes.
Now,
Jacko-legs.
Jacko-legs, that was the
Yeah.
Jacko-legs episode.
I did something about a dragon in a cave.
Yes, we still need to visit that actually.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Maybe do a follow-up.
Yes,
Well, and you did it about the headless horse.
the headless horse, or the headless white horse.
So we got a comment on that episode from Roxy, who's down in Devonshire, and she said, "There's lots of folklore and myths down this way. Dartmoor has a few. Maybe you could explore this in an episode of Devonshire Myths."
And that's what we're going to do
Yes.
right now.
Yes. And further to that, she said, "Check out the Hairy Hands of Dartmoor story.
Oh,
Lots of people claim to have seen them.
I wonder if Roxy's had any experience of the hairy hands of Dartmoor.
And I wonder
The hairy groke of Dartmoor.
Leave the groke out of it.
if we're going to visit the Hairy Hands of Dartmoor in this episode."
Well, we might do, or we might not. Let's
So-
find out.
This is going to follow a similar format to our previous folklore episode. We have each
Chosen a
story,
story
a
from,
myth,
in
a
this
folklore,
case, Devonshire.
Devonshire, and we're going to share them.
Yes.
Yes.
So, who's kicking off? I think it's Jack.
Okay, so there was a lot to choose from. I found there was quite a few sort of interesting folklore sort of tales
Oh,
around
there's
the area.
Hundreds. Of
But I decided to go for Crockern Tor. Crockern Tor?
Crockern
Or
Tor.
Croken Tor? I'm not sure how it's...
Now, I've heard of Hound Tor.
Well, we've climbed Hound Tor.
Yeah. Famous site of a Doctor Who filming location.
Nice.
The Sontaran experiment, by the way.
So it's
That's
known as
the first Doctor Who reference in this episode. You know.
bingo cards.
Bingo cards. There might be another one coming up.
Really?
Keep an eye out for it.
So Crockern Tor,
Mm-hmm.
also known as Crockern Tor.
Crockern.
Spelled slight-
Crockern. I think I've heard of that name.
Crockern Tor with an E on the end.
Mm-hmm.
Or Parliament Rock.
Ooh.
Okay.
So it kind of goes on under several names. This somewhat insignificant rock pile, when viewed from the south, lies on the gentle slope above Parson's Cottage just to the north of the B3212 between Two Bridges and Powder Mills.
Does that mean that it's on Dartmoor itself?
Yes, I believe so.
Right.
You saying Two Bridges?
Yes,
Oh.
between Two Bridges and Powder Mills.
Interesting
And
location.
It's easily accessed through a gate by the road. Just if anyone wants to know.
If anybody wants to know. So what's so fascinating about Crockern? What was it? Crockern Pile.
Crockern Tor.
Crockern Tor.
Some
Oh
cream,
no, you said it was a pile of rocks. That's it.
cream for my Crockern pile.
Okay. This is getting
Please continue, Jack.
This is getting
Please
very,
continue.
very obscure now. Come on.
Okay, despite its lowly appearance, the Tor is nonetheless steeped in history, as once the site of Stannery Court proceedings that, according to William Crossing in 1909, date back to September 1494.
Right, so they had meetings there,
Yes.
hence
For
why parliamentary.
Parliament kind of makes
Yes,
sense.
and I think it was miners that used to meet there and sort of...
What, small children?
No comment.
I think you
I deny any allegation.
dwarven miners.
Okay, here among the sprawl of rocks, the various laws and rules of engagement for tin mining on Dartmoor were debated and decided upon for a period of just over 300 years.
Okay, right. So what's folklore about this
So,
particular place?
Crockern Tor is said to be the home of the mythical Old Crockern.
Old Crockern.
That sounds like a crocodile.
There's something in the
Or Crockern, maybe? I'm not sure how...
The Crockern.
Old Crockern. There's something ringing a bell there.
Like a kraken?
I can't
like an
quite,
octopus?
Can't quite place it myself right at the moment.
So, variously described as a spectral figure on horseback galloping across the moor
Ooh.
on a skeleton horse with his phantom hounds, which were stabled at nearby Wisman's Wood, was a local god of the moor in pre-Christian times.
So why is this ringing a bell with me? I'm thinking
It kind of
I've
feels.
heard that
It
recently.
kind of feels like Ghost Rider or something.
I'm sure I've heard that mentioned recently.
There is a reason you've heard of it recently,
Oh yes.
probably something quite close to your sort of area of expertise. But before
Do
that,
tell more. Do tell more.
I will sort of set the scene.
Okay, set the scene.
So there's a quote from Sabine Baring Gould, and he wrote in a Book of the West in 1899, "The girt old spirit of the moors, old Crockern himself, grey as granite, and his eyebrows hanging down over his glimmering eyes like sedge." What's sedge?
Sedge.
I'm not sure what that means.
Sage?
No, sedge. It's a grass.
And his eyes as deep as peat water pools. So that's from an old Book of the West
Mm-hmm.
from 1899. So that's kind of one of the
That was
references.
a description of him.
One of the references in sort of old literature. So a little bit more about Old Crockern and why this kind of plays into something that's happening quite recently. Old Crockern is the guardian spirit of Dartmoor. In the Book of the West, the Rev. Sabine Baring Gould tells of a rich Lancashire man who had purchased thousands of acres of moorland and begun reclaiming it using the latest technology. One day he met an old moorman with a message for him. Are you ready to hear the message?
Oh, yeah.
Please.
So you can do it in a voice?
No, I'm not very good at voice acting. I've
Okay.
got a very monotone voice, as you can tell. "Last night I falled asleep, and then I saw the girt spirit of the moors, old Crockern himself, grey as granite, and his eyebrows hanging down over his glimmering eyes like sedge, and his eyes deep as peat water pools. Says he to me, 'Bear Muster Vowler a message from me. Tell Muster Vowler if he scratches my back, I'll tear out his pocket.'"
Right, so he's talking about Master Vowler, I presume. Master Vowler, yeah.
Muster Vowler, yeah. possibly.
What does he say? If he...
"Tell Muster Vowler if he scratches my back, I'll tear out his pocket."
Right, so scratches my back, he's referring to damaging the moor, I take it.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's kind of
yes.
how I depicted it, but
So
I'm
if
not
he
sure.
damages my land...
I'll take his
I'll-
wealth.
Yes, I'll...
A lot of this is kind of old English. So it kind
Yeah,
of
I
translates
got
over.
that in the wording.
Yeah. The warning was justified, the foolhardy businessman going bankrupt soon after. As for Old Crocker, not much else is known about him, except that on dark, stormy nights he emerges from Crockern Tor riding a skeletal horse.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a bit like
So,
Ghost Rider.
is he kind of like a good spirit or like a bad spirit?
I think
Defender,
when
it
we-
sounds like a defender of the moorland.
in my next kind of bit, it will kind of, I think it's, you sort of call on him as a kind of favour, maybe?
Protector
Like,
kind of thing.
you kind of, yeah,
A protective spirit.
possibly.
That's kind of cool.
Would
Okay.
you like to see, I've only found like one sort of decent image
Okay.
Not
okay.
a real
This is
picture.
gonna
Would be
work-
quite.
this is going to work really well on the podcast.
Yes, it will. We can describe to the audience
Yes.
what we're seeing. So this was the image I found.
Oh my.
So
Oh,
it's
right,
very
so
much a skeletal horse
It's a skeletal horse
with kind of a
rearing up in front of the tour.
with a skeletonish,
He looks
very thin man.
very malnourished.
Yeah, and he has a
big
broadsword.
That's a hero
But
quest.
very
Those
dark,
hero
sunken
quests.
eyes, like they said in
Oh,
the.
he kind of looks like a zombie on a horse.
Yeah.
It's like Voldemort.
Yeah, kind of Voldemort on a horse.
Yeah,
yes.
definitely. Listeners, do look this up.
And
But I also found, looking for pictures, I also found another one that was kind of, I haven't got it here, but it's almost like, he's almost like a Santa Claus figure. Like he's a bit bigger, so I don't know what
So
kind of.
I suppose it depends on whether you've seen him or not, whether you're gonna
Yeah.
how you're gonna depict him.
And also I noticed in that picture no spectral hounds, like
Mhm.
it's stated in one of the passages.
The artist ran out of ink.
So this plays into something that's happened quite recently in the news. The High Court has judged in favour of abolishing the right to wild camp on Dartmoor,
Oh yes.
Oh, I
yes,
heard
yes,
about
yes, yes. This is where it's coming from.
the only place in England where it was legal.
Yeah, because I mean I can't remember for how long. Pretty much from the beginning of time, Dartmoor itself has been the only place in England. We're not talking about Scotland, Wales. We're talking about England that you could wild camp legally.
Hmm.
You know, in Scotland, I think the right to roam is pretty much anywhere. A lot of Scandinavian countries, I believe, are the same. But in England, normal people do not have a right to wild camp, as in pitch a tent anywhere they want to. It's basically illegal. So therefore, having somewhere like Dartmoor was, you know, a real jewel in the
Haven,
crown.
yeah.
Exactly.
Mm.
So I mean, people do go and wild camp. They go to the Brecon Beacons. They go up into the Peak District and Cumbria to the lakes and places like that. But technically, it's not legal to do that, and a warden can move you on. But down at Dartmoor, it was always been part of Dartmoor as you can do that. And I know that there's an awful lot of organisations like the Scouts and the Duke of Edinburgh's Award would do.
I
these
can imagine that being.
camps out there.
Yeah.
But what you're saying, Jack, and it was in the news that somebody taken it to the High Court because I think they own. I don't know if you've got the details on this, but
Yes, I've got a little bit.
so they have about 40,000 acres or something, or 4,000 acres of land.
What I have here, it says Alexander Darwell, a multimillionaire estate owner in the South Dartmoor, has used his wealth and entitlement to remove our ancient right to connect with the land, all by consenting a bylaw from the 1980s, which simply acknowledged the long-established practice of sleeping under the stars.
Yeah, I think the problem was, and I don't know exactly the details because it's been a bit sketchy exactly what prompted him to do this, but we've had, especially over the period where we had COVID lockdown, etc., and we had a lot,
Yeah, that's what I was
lot of
gonna
people
ask that,
going out
yeah.
into the countryside and trashing the countryside and leaving their rubbish everywhere, even going to the point of just like buying a 20 quid tent and leaving the tents out as well.
Because they can't fit it back in the bag.
Ground-based barbecues, burning the ground, setting to, having
Forest fires and things.
yeah, heather fires across the moors and things. And of course, we're talking about peat bogs, which can obviously burn. So I don't know whether this particular gentleman, what was his name? Cohen, did you say?
Alexander Darwell.
Darwell. Perhaps, and I don't know this, perhaps he had people camping on his land, on the moors, and they could have caused a lot of disruption, left rubbish, whatever, and that landowner's got fed up with it. And yeah, he's obviously managed to not get everybody kicked off his land, but intrinsically
Kick everyone
kicked
off.
everybody off of Dartmoor. So it's not legal to wild camp, which is
That's disappointing for like
very bad news.
your traditional kind of
But-
bushcrafters.
But
Ooh.
we have a saviour, Old Crockern.
Oh, Crockern.
Oh,
So
That's where I've heard this. This is still coming back to me now. It was a few days ago this hit the news.
So this article is from Eventbrite, and it's setting up an event for people in the area to kind of
21st of January, is it?
Yes,
Yes.
I'll read on. We are calling, so this isn't my view, this is just the view
Yeah.
of the people writing. We are calling on the old spirit of Old Crockern, the ancient protector of the moor, to oppose this decision. Old Crockern represents the values that sit within our campaign and those that embody Dartmoor: inclusivity, freedom, growth, relationship, and humanity. We call on the many generations of people who love Dartmoor: locals, visitors, campers, farmers, walkers, students, naturalists, land workers, fishers, climbers, swimmers, bikers, so
And
so forth.
So forth. What about bushcrafters?
Support the campaign to support the right to roam in this fight to defend wild camping and expand our right to access nature everywhere. So so this is very much an ongoing thing at the moment.
It needs to be overturned, to be honest with you. I mean, people have used the right to sleep out under the stars on Dartmoor for so many years.
Just to suddenly have it snatched away.
That's not.
It's
right.
so wrong.
That's not right.
So wrong.
So the people of Dartmoor are
up in arms,
calling on an old spirit to, I assume, avenge them.
Well, if the story you told us, where that businessman went bankrupt, Mr. Darwell better watch out.
Better hold on to his pockets.
Parallels.
Yeah.
So yes, as it's an ongoing thing, it does tie into the kind of Devonshire folklore.
It certainly
It's
does.
an interesting.
It is. Well, you've actually crossed over Devonshire folklore with a
little bit of
topical
survival,
subject.
Bit of politics.
Yeah. Well, again, my stance as a wild camper myself is that definitely needs to be.
Definitely, because
back
we
into
we
place.
would probably plan to do.
Oh, we've been to the moors.
Yeah.
So many times. We've climbed lots of the different tours and had wonderful times there. And Jack, have you been to Dartmoor at all?
I don't believe so. No.
So the basic rule was, if you can walk onto the moor, you can't camp using a camper van or a caravan. But if you can walk on there, ergo you're a backpacker.
Right.
Unless it's changed, all the parking areas.
Very restricted.
Well, they're very restricted in the first place. They all have signs up saying no overnight parking, and they do get wardens coming around. So that basically prevents you from taking a vehicle,
Parking it.
and parking up in the moors. So there might be an exception to that in places.
It's got a bit of accessibility issues regarding parking.
But ultimately, it was if you could walk onto the moors, you could camp there.
If you're out of sight of the road, you can camp there.
And obviously if you are doing that, then I should expect you to be doing that with respect. That means not burning fires on the naked ground and leaving scorch marks, not pooping in the bushes and just
That sounds a
leaving
very
it there.
specific reference.
Croaking in the bush.
Croaking in the bushes.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to the croak. Honestly, we shouldn't joke about that, because that's the trouble. When you got a lot of humans go into a place and then you get all that, I'm sorry listeners, but you're going to get all that excrement and they just leave it around. It's not just the excrement, because they leave toilet paper around. And this is all, and the animals, well, inevitably animals are animals. They'll go digging it up
anything.
and spreading it around everywhere, and it's awful. It's
visceral.
absolutely awful. And you can get bags to take with you, that if you do need to do that when you're out and about, you can bag it up and take it home. Please.
But nobody wants to do that.
Anyway.
Well, you said it's a bit like dog walkers, I don't get this. The dog walkers use a poo bag for your doggy poo. They pick it up. They've been fondling that hot dog feces in the bag, tie a knot in it.
I don't think we needed that.
And then they hang it on a bush.
Yeah.
You've gone through all that effort of picking it up,
I think
and then
that's
you
a
hang it on a
technique,
bush.
though, isn't it? Isn't that a technique that you leave it there and then you come on the way back from your walk, so you don't have to carry it with you? You get it on the
Yeah,
way
but
back.
really, who does that?
Who does that? Stick it in your pocket and keeps your hand warm, doesn't it? Now, you might be cringing at that thought, but in the army, it's one of the things when you're out and
Poo
about.
talk with the now in a show.
Poo talk.
Oh no!
But they, a lot of times, or if you're doing survival stuff, you use cling film. That's a joke. You use cling film and you wrap it up.
Squeaky.
You wrap it up and make a little packet, right? But it acts as a hand warmer if you're in cold climate.
Packet of poo.
And then take it with you.
You never know what you're going to talk about on the Now We Know show.
Anyway, I regret bringing up my
nice little tip there of keeping your hands warming on a cold day. Yes, but anyway, dog walkers, they throw it into the trees, straight into the bushes. Take it home, Will, please. Everybody, take it home.
Anyway, that was Crockern.
Old Crockern.
Old Crockern. Defending the moor.
Okay.
On his spectral horse with his spectral hounds.
You defeat him with cling film and poo.
No, we don't.
Somewhat tenuous connections there.
Yes. Power to the moor campers.
I think we're gonna hold it there.
Cool. Okay.
And we're gonna move on to the next mythic folklore story.
Okay.
Mine ended on a really pooey note.
Useful tips there. Some useful tips. Burn your toilet paper. Don't leave it lying
Buzz.
around. Yes.
What is your folklore from Devonshire?
Make it smell really bad though.
I'm afraid I'm going to disappoint you. There's no poo involved.
Oh, come on! Why'd you even bother?
Now we've gone from spectral horses and it's a skeletal horse and spectral hounds to now the devil himself.
Ooh.
Have you heard of the devil's hoof prints?
No.
No.
To be honest, early doors, this sounds like there should be some evidence for this.
Right.
So I'm interested to see if there is actually prints.
On the 2nd of February, 1855, so we're not talking hundreds of years ago, we're talking the late 19th century, they had a heavy snowfall in the Exeter area, well, across Devon, and when people came out in the morning on that faithful day, they'd found a trackway of hoof prints, cloven hoof prints, that were in a single file line, which is odd in itself, because a quadruped will leave just a hoof print, one after the other.
Yeah.
They'll got 4 legs. They usually they sort of tread in their own.
So it's like a bipedal kind of footprint.
Like that, but you'd have to be walking like a supermodel or a speed walker, putting one foot right in front of the other foot when you walk.
Maybe it's
if you can imagine, when I used to get you guys in training to do speed walking, and you have to put your foot right in front of the other foot, and do this kind of weird wiggle as you're doing speed walking. That's why speed walkers wiggle. So, don't joke. So, everybody woke up and they found this trail of hoof prints, one in front of the other. The local magistrates were alerted, the local vicars were alerted, and soon the story spread, and it was discovered that this trail of footprints tracked for 40 miles in the fresh snow.
40 miles?
40 miles.
In a straight line?
I'll get to that, because it gets even weirder. So it's weird enough that you've got these hoof prints.
Hoof prints as well.
That are literally in a line. I've got a little sketch here. They're literally in that straight line.
Fantastic artwork.
Fantastic artwork. Clearly in a straight line.
Were they that small?
Yeah, they were that small. Well,
Crikey.
They're supposedly meant to have been what you'd expect to have from a cloven, sort of like a goat print or something.
Yeah.
That sort of size.
Was it a satyr? Is that what they call it?
Yeah, a satyr. Yeah, he's got like a pan, you mean?
Yeah.
Mr. Tumnus.
He's
gone
from
out for
Narnia.
a wander. He's nipped out from Narnia.
Yeah, it does sound like Mr. Thomas.
Mr. Tumnus. But anyway, the thing was, it was initially found that they went for 40 miles unbroken, this trail, but then reports further down the line say that it actually extended for 100 miles overnight. Okay. Now, you're talking about an animal that can travel that sort of distance
in one
night.
What?
Leaving this trail in the snow.
How long roughly would it take you to walk 100 miles?
Well,
hours and hours and hours.
Even 40 miles. I mean, we've done a walk which took us best part of the day, which was about 25 miles, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And now, this is where it gets a bit weird, because they were clearly a cloven hoof, and also, it was combined with the strangeness of them being one in front of the other, they also, other strange things. Now, they didn't go in a dead straight line, from what I've read about it. It meandered a little bit, but it would get to things like, one eyewitness's report that was in I think a newspaper article said that they'd followed the trail to a haystack in a field.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, don't think of modern haystacks where they're like either circular
bales
or square bales. You would have had just the old-fashioned
pile
of hay. Stopped at the haystack. The gentleman went round the haystack, and they started in on the opposite side of the haystack immediately.
Right. Immediately?
As if it jumped over the haystack. But even more stranger than that, when this trail met buildings and houses, the footprints could be seen going out in the snow over the rooftops.
Oh.
What? No.
So a dead straight line over the roofs.
Over the rooftops of buildings in the snow.
Oh my God, that's a
stick.
whole new level.
Yeah. Now that's where it gets very weird,
That's where it gets weird.
So it gets weird. So the thing was, there wasn't really much evidence to support these newspaper cuttings. It was hearsay until a collection of papers belonging to a Reverend Elcombe who was the vicar of St George, this paperwork that they discovered that he had was a letter from one of his friends, a Reverend M. Musgrove of Withycombe Raleigh, and this letter was marked not for publication, and it contained images where that vicar had drawn sketches of the footprints.
Oh.
Actually, on the day.
And it looked like the ones you...
Yeah, like the ones I jotted down. Like these hoof prints, one in front of the other.
They kind of look like a kind of horse print.
Kind of like a horse print. That's what his sketch was more of a horseshoe print.
A one-legged horse.
Well,
just hopping.
Walks into a bar.
Well, that was the thing. It was even described like it would have to be made by an animal that hopped on one leg to produce that trail over this supposedly. Some people say that, from what I've read, it might have been exaggerated to go the 100 miles.
But over roofs, that's...
From east.
Yeah.
I think you travel from
mad.
East to West Devon. But certainly this unbroken trail of singular hoof prints, which went over buildings and things, because you're talking about a fresh fall of snow.
Yeah,
and then people coming out and say, well, hang on a minute, it's gone up onto that roof and over the roof, and they've gone round the other side.
And how did that even happen without anyone noticing?
Exactly. Well, of course. So all the locals start thinking, well, this must be the devil. And the devil has walked overnight, and it's a cloven footprint. That's why it's become known as the devil's hoof prints. And it's not the only recording of this, because I've also dug up that 15 years earlier...
We could say 15 years ago.
in Scotland, there was also a recording of a similar track, of this one hoof print in front of the other.
Even for like a mile, that would be a weird pattern, wouldn't it? Let alone 100 miles.
Yeah.
Even for a few, like...
Well, even for the initial reported 40 miles.
Yeah, exactly.
And the fact that it's going over the roofs of houses.
That's mad.
Not breaking its line.
It's obviously not like some kind of horse or cow.
Also, 17th of March 1855 in Heidelberg, again a similar...
Heidelberg. Sounds Germany.
It was Germany. I think it might have been Poland. I'm not sure exactly where this particular place was, but I think it was reported by a Polish gentleman, so it could have been Poland. Of this same similar track, reported like a one-legged animal hopping.
Yeah, because they're pretty separate locations, so it's interesting that this kind of happened in multiple places.
Anything disastrous happened before or after, as it's kind of like a sign or something.
Is it like a sense of foreboding?
Yeah.
Well,
like
people have obviously tried to explain, and they've said, could it have been a hoax, or could it have been a track made by something that then somebody has extended out to say it's gone further and further and further.
But 100 miles, that's going a bit far, isn't it?
But the eyewitness report said that it went over houses, and as I said, one of them said it had literally it seemed to have leapt over this hay bale in the field, haystack, because it stopped and then started the other side with no sign of it on the hay bale. It's a hay stack itself.
It passed through the hay bale.
Well, if it was the devil.
Could be like Remo Williams going through sand.
But there are other things I need to bring up.
The devil works in mysterious ways.
It was fresh snow, because it snowed overnight, and the impression of these prints supposedly went very deep into the snow.
So it was heavy then.
So whatever the creature was that made it was weighty. They said far heavier than what you'd expect from a goat.
Or even a man.
To put, because it went deep into the snow.
I think it was a very early pogo stick. Someone used a hoof as the base.
Well, because of the sudden, you can imagine the locals will be starting to get a bit terrified. The rumours going around.
God-fearing.
It's the devil, and if you've seen these footprints, or or if you've seen a strange figure, it kind of reminded me of that London folklore of. What's that chap?
Spring Heel Jack.
Spring Heel Jack, because he could jump over things and
just a random reference. You bring that up. They explored that in Primeval, and actually it was a raptor.
Right. So yeah, there's
Not in real life.
Not in real life.
But yeah, we'll have to look into Spring-Heeled Jack. But it's, he was a character that was supposedly attacked people and people. And,
It's kind of like Jack the Ripper and stuff.
yeah, but
Or Jack O'Legs.
But
Why they
he
were
had
called Jack?
a demon, if I recall, he had demon red eyes.
Wait,
and could literally,
you were Demon Jack.
literally leap over walls and over roofs and all sorts. And so yeah, people saw him leaping across roofs and things.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they kind of thought, oh yeah, this is kind of a Spring-Heeled Jack.
Bit peculiar.
Because people said that Spring-Heeled Jack was a demon, you know. Anyway, so we've got this trail of hoof prints. They do meander, and they're deep in the snow, and they're going over buildings and things. To this day, there doesn't seem to be any explanation of this phenomenon, why it happened, why it went for such a distance, and how it managed to negotiate these obstacles. But what I can say is that there was a rumour set out by one of the reverends that it was an escaped kangaroo.
Known for jumping on one leg.
Cloven hoof.
Supposedly, no, and although he admitted later on that he'd made the story up about the kangaroo because he wanted to calm down his local parishioners because they were all fixated over the fact that it was the devil.
It's quite
And
scary though.
So he said a kangaroo had escaped a local menagerie, and he was trying to calm everybody. No, it's a kangaroo. It's a kangaroo.
Don't worry, it's just a one-legged freaky
one-legged-
kangaroo that can
one-legged-
jump for 100 miles
one-legged
There's got to be a
kangaroo.
horror movie in that somewhere.
over buildings.
Yeah.
Don't worry, everyone.
I've never seen a kangaroo with a cloven hoof.
There you go. It could just be a horror movie
But
set
you
on the Dartmoor.
laugh at that. Other suggestions were badgers, but I can't see badgers.
Cloven
climbing
hoof.
a
A
roof.
one-legged badger. That sounds like a...
But another one said it was mice. It was
What?
mice. That because of the snow, mice have to hop through the snow.
I can
And because
kind
they're
of see that.
small, they were just like
But over a
this one
building would be quite
for
extreme.
40 miles and over roofs
That's
and
how-
things.
Frog, maybe?
Now I did.
Heavy frog.
Now I got one thing that came up, which one person did say was the reason for this. Actually, if it's factual in its foundation, then you could kind of understand this. All right, so I'll just let you know what this one is. It was an author called Geoffrey Household suggested that it was an experimental balloon that had been released from a Devonport dockyard, and that the shackles that were on the end of the rope were the source of the trail because they kept bouncing across.
And also like
land.
a chain, the end of a chain, you could make that kind of V shape, couldn't you?
Yeah, and it was said that it was he had been told by a source, by a local man called Major Carter, and that the whole incident had been hushed up due to damage that this balloon had caused to people's conservatories and outbuildings and things.
I actually think that could be
But the fact is that this trail, this is why I went back to the beginning, it didn't go in a straight line. It meanders, or it meandered over things and around and about, whereas if you've got a balloon...
Wouldn't it get blasted by the wind, maybe?
Perhaps, but...
Or would it follow the wind? Or
They said that it was unlikely that a balloon would not track it like in a dead straight line. If you think, if you let go of a helium balloon, it goes in a straight line.
Yeah.
So if you've got this dirty, great big experimental balloon with a rope, with a shackle at the end that's somehow bumping along the ground, and heavy enough to sink itself into the snow in this cloven hoof shape and exactly the right... Yeah, because
you're saying nobody saw this?
Nobody saw it, you see.
And also, if it hit a building, it would be like a
streak
scrape up the building if it was a chain. Because the
over
balloon
the
wouldn't adjust to the building height.
No,
Would it?
it would scrape and take the
probably
snow off the roof.
Yeah, and probably
rather
stop
than-
the balloon as well. Maybe.
And even if that was the case, how would that explain the incidents in Scotland and Poland?
And the hand sketches showing this hoof shape
Yeah.
at equidistances.
I think what's
So
interesting
there
about
we go,
that as well
sir.
is
To this day, it's never been explained. The devil's hoof
I think what's
print.
interesting
And
about
the
that is
reason I
that
was
it's-
mentioning Doctor Who was because I felt there was a reference in the Daemons.
Oh yeah, the Daemons. Yeah.
Of the Devonshire Devil's hoof prints, because they've got that part in it with the hoof prints going all the way across the field.
Yeah. Very true. Very true.
So-
I think what's interesting about that is that it was the late 1800s as well.
Yes.
It's not like it was like the 1500s where it's like it could have been translated or like kind of Chinese whispers through the years,
Mhm.
but it's fairly
Yeah, it's fairly
recent.
new.
Yeah,
Fairly new.
so I
And
find that quite interesting.
it's just got unusual things about the story. Lots of witnesses saw it. Newspapers at the time reported it. The prints obviously got sketched down and were hoof-shaped. The depth that they penetrated the snow was suggestive of a very heavy weight, more than a standard animal. And the fact that they went over roofs,
Yeah,
over buildings.
I'm interested where it started and where it finished.
Yeah.
Did it just appear there, or was there like a gradual? I don't know.
Well, there we go.
There we are.
The
So-
infamous
so-
Devil's Hoofprints.
So it was either a balloon, the devil, or an evil kanga.
Not
Or
necessarily
mice.
evil.
Or mice.
Or mice.
Mice, I think, possibly.
40 miles.
Even
Over
100
roofs?
miles.
Over
And in
roofs?
3 different... Well, I don't know. Maybe 3 different places would suggest to me that it's nature of some sort.
That's a heavy mouse.
Heavy Mouse. It's the name of my new rock band.
Introducing Heavy Mouse. Yeah. Anyway, so that's my little bit of Devonshire folklore, is the Devil's Hoofprints,
Right. So that brings us on to our third story,
which must be yours.
which is mine. And I've done the story on, as prompted by Roxy, the Hairy Hands of Dartmoor.
I want to know about these hairy hands. Dartmoor.
Yeah.
It seems a very odd thing to say.
Obviously, we've had someone from the area suggest it, so it must be kind of
A
still
well-known
a well-known, prevalent.
folklore.
So would you like to find out?
No.
Yeah, I'm just imagining these like just these two hairy hands not attached to anything, and it's like, how does this work?
Well, like the like thing from
Yeah.
Adam's Family, like walking
Yeah.
along.
I'm loving the theories.
Yeah, what do these hairy hands do?
Okie dokie.
Come on, tell us.
The Hairy Hands is a ghost story / legend that built up around a stretch of road on a remote area of Dartmoor in the English country of Devon. Funny enough.
I hope so. I hope so, as you're on the wrong show, mate.
Missed the mark.
Which was reported to have seen an unusually high number of motor vehicle accidents during the early 20th century.
Right, so we're getting even.
The hairy hands grab the steering wheel.
Yeah, so the hairy hands are even newer than the hoof prints.
Like a Twilight Zone episode. You look down, your hands are hairy, and then they grab the steering wheel
And run
take
you
you
off the road.
Yeah.
So, the legend of the Hairy Hands is set in Postbridge, Dartmoor. The road is now known as the B3212.
That's a boring name.
I think that was where that was mentioned in my story.
Was it
Yeah,
the same one?
Yeah.
So the hairy hands.
I'm sure it was.
Go on, you've got to check your stuff.
Postbridge.
While he's doing his one, you check back.
Okay.
Bear with, listener.
Bear with.
According to the story surrounding them, the Hairy Hands are a pair of disembodied hands that
What the hell?
appear suddenly, grab a steering wheel of a moving car or the handlebars of a motorcycle,
This is weird.
and then force the victim off the road.
Oh my god, I was correct.
It was the same road.
In some cases, sorry,
Was it the same road?
Right. Okay, flashback to
Yep.
this episode. The somewhat insignificant rock pile, when viewed from the south, lies in the gentle slope above Parsons Cottage, just to the north of the B3212.
oh my god,
It's the same road.
same road.
So you're driving.
Don't go to this road
You're
again.
driving along, and suddenly, bing!
Getting chased by a spectral horse.
You look in your rear view mirror, spectral horse and hounds, and then suddenly, damn, there's these pair of big hairy hands on the steering
There we
wheel.
go. Need a versus movie. Old crocodile, whatever his
There's
name
old
is.
Crockern versus the hairy hands.
Yes.
The Avengers of Devonshire Folklore.
In some cases, the hands are described as being invisible.
How did you see them then?
How are they hairy?
I don't know. How do they know they're hair if they're invisible? Could it be that the devil's hoof prints are actually this disembodied pair of hands? And donk, 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 donk.
Yeah, it's a giant con. It's not actually the hands that are doing it.
It's the hands. The hands said, to old Crockern, right, I'm nipping outside. You see this snow? I'm going for a wander, mate.
Okay, incidents. Since around 1910, drivers and cyclists have reported suffering unusual accidents along the road between Postbridge and Two Bridges.
Been
That's
grabbed
exactly-
by the hairy hand.
That's exactly where mine was, Postbridge
Yeah,
and Two
yeah,
Bridges.
that's why I mentioned it when you said
How
it.
bizarre.
In many cases, the victims reported that their vehicle had jolted or swerved violently and steered off the side of the road, as if something had taken hold of the wheels and wrenched it out of control.
So
Imagine looking at your driving tests and you've got to go through the B3212.
no,
Please, no!
no, I don't want to. So it's either some kind of invisible force has suddenly wrenched the steering wheel, But I want to know about the people that have actually seen these disembodied hairy hands, because they were actually saying hairy hands, not hands.
Hairy
hands.
Specifically hairy hands.
Yes,
specifically hairy and invisible.
Hairy animals. I want to know why they're hairy.
Is the hair not invisible?
Maybe they're the spectral hounds. They're not hands, they're furry hounds.
Oh, I see. He had his furry hands that used to live in the local woods.
It's been lost in translation there.
The furry hands of Dartmoor.
Furry hands.
Right.
Man.
The fuzzy hands of Dartmoor.
So, do we know if I'm interjecting? Do we know if the hairy hands of Dartmoor actually appeared prior to motor vehicles being on the road?
Well, I'm going to get to things. Okay. In most instances, the victims ran into a verge and survived. Their experiences remained a local curiosity until June 1921, when E.H. Helby, the medical officer for Dartmoor Prison, was killed when he lost control of his motorcycle and sidecar. 2 young girls, children of the prison governor, who had been riding in the sidecar, survived. Several weeks after Helby's death, there was another incident in which a coach driver lost control, injuring several passengers who were thrown out of their seats. Then, on the 26th of August 1921, an army captain reported that a pair of invisible hands had taken hold.
Don't laugh.
Here's Jack. Sorry, he sniggered. He sniggered. Okay.
Sorry. He stopped sniggering in the corner.
A pair of
invisible hands.
Invisible hands had taken hold of him and forced his motorcycle off the road, after which the story was picked up by newspapers in London and the story became known nationwide.
I wonder if you can put that on your insurance contract. Some invisible hand grabs my wheel.
How does he tell they're actually hands? They could have been invisible feet.
Right.
Someone standing
Well, how can they grab? There's their monkey feet.
Well, you've got monkey feet, you can pick things
The
up.
invisible monkey feet of Dartmoor.
Anyway.
Right.
Where's the hair coming to?
Well, I'm going to go through all the stuff. In Supernatural Dartmoor by Michael Williams, there is a story told by journalist and author Rufus Endell. He claimed that while driving near Post Bridge on an unstated date, a pair of hands gripped the driving wheel and I had to fight for control. He managed to avoid a crash and the hands disappeared as inexplicably as they had come. He requested that Williams not publish the story until after his death for fear of ridicule.
So he actually saw the hands?
Yes.
The invisible hands.
Did he mention they were hairy though?
Not even waiting for the hairy bit.
Yeah, it seems very important that they're hairy hands.
Not all reported incidents occurred in moving vehicles. One incident in 1924, a woman camping on the moor with her husband reported seeing a hairy hand attempting to gain access to her caravan. Sorry.
It's a euphemism.
No, it's a caravan, okay?
Let your hairy hand gain access to my caravan.
During the night, okay?
It's just the imagery is quite amazing.
But that's a reference to them being a hairy hand.
Okay,
Silence.
Sorry.
Calm it down.
If she's in the caravan, how does she know that it's a singular hairy hand trying to gain access?
She reported that the hand retreated after she made the sign of the cross.
Did he give her the bird?
Are you talking about the husband or the hairy hand?
Just floating there.
I can't breathe.
Taps on the window.
Listeners, if you could see what's happening in the studio right now, Jack and Buzz have completely broken down into laughter and tears. It is quite the spectacle.
Oh,
I was just thinking of his hand like being turned away by the side of the cross. As you say, it comes out to the window. Flicks on the bird.
I'm leaving this in. For the record, I'm leaving this in.
Sorry.
Right.
can't breathe.
Would you like some explanations?
Yes, we need some explanations. Oh
Right.
dear, this is so funny. Do you want to read, anybody out there who's a wild camper, do you really want a wild camp on Dartmoor? In case they hear me out?
Especially around this particular location.
Oh man. Carry on.
Fraught with myths and folklore.
Oh, breathe. Right, carry on. Okay.
Explanations. Most variations of the legend of the hairy hands do not specify the origins of the hands or attribute them to any specific purpose, other than driving motorists off the road. A few local versions of the story attribute the hands to an unnamed man who died in an accident on the road.
Right, okay.
According to skeptics, most of the accidents were caused by people who were unfamiliar with the area driving too fast down narrow country roads with high walled sides, resulting in them either losing control or misjudging the road and running off its edges.
There's not a local pub to this place, is there?
Maybe we'll have to visit.
They've had a skin
But we'll
fall.
have to walk. We're going to walk.
You're gonna
I'm
walk.
not going to drive.
Don't take your caravan.
After the story appeared
So
in
you're
the...
seeing double. You see 2 extra.
Had a bit too much to drink. And he's, oh my God, I'm seeing 2 hairy hands.
After the story appeared in the national press, several investigations were carried out into the road. It was eventually determined that the accidents were most likely due to the camber of the road's surface, which reached dangerous levels in places and was duly altered.
Right.
There you are. That's the official
So the
explanation.
camber of the road being like
Yeah,
the... Right.
from the centre of the road down to the... So when it rains, the rain can wash off the road.
So I can see maybe old cars, if they slipped off the camber, maybe
Mm-hmm.
the wheel would tug to the left, and maybe people in a kind of fit of fear maybe saw 2 hands or something.
Well, they were being tugged off by
Sorry?
a couple of hairy
Excuse me? Thank you very much, Roxy, for suggesting this particular story. It has been most enriching, and the reaction that we've had in the studio has been phenomenal. So thank you very much.
was a woman.
into the
That
episode.
poor lady trying to explain to her husband that oh, this is brilliant. Have we had any recent oh, get sensible. Have we had any recent sightings of the hairy hands?
So far as I can find,
Okay.
there have been no recent sightings of the hairy hands on Dartmoor.
Right.
However, there has been several mentions of this in media. The legend was linked to witchcraft in the short play The Hairy Hands of Dartmoor by Michael McStay, broadcast on BBC Radio 4 on the 8th of February in 1999. Also, the hairy hands were mentioned by Josh Widdicombe on Monster Mash, an episode of Series M of the panel show QI. Widdicombe again mentioned the story in Series 2, Episode 2 of the comedy panel show Hypothetical, hosted by James Acaster, and on the 19th of April 2019 episode of Have I Got a Bit More News for You, and again on the 28th of February 2020 episode of The Last Leg.
So it's still a pretty kind of popular...
Yeah, that's probably
Story.
how Roxy came to know about it. Unless she went and ventured.
Oh,
It was mentioned on the last leg. They're nearly forming a whole body.
I just kind of get these visions. If you've watched Dog Soldiers, where when the 10 zip is going, it's this werewolf's hairy hand coming into the tent. You think, okay, maybe getting the reversal on the wild camping wasn't such a good idea.
So we've gone to from not
How
supporting.
did he die? he was tugged off by the hairy hands of Dartmoor.
So at the beginning of this episode, we fully supported wild camping on Dartmoor.
We still do.
No, it's
Just need to be
you
warning.
just need a cross to ward off those hairy hands.
You just need a warning.
Keep your sleeping bag zipped up.
Don't drive.
Don't drive. Watch out for skeletal horses and spectral hounds.
He likes caravans.
Yeah, look out for one-legged, cloven-hoofed animals that hop over roofs.
And avoid caravans.
Oh no, avoid caravans and the hairy hands and Dartmoor. And take your poo home with you.
In cling film if you can.
And there we have it, listeners.
Yay!
That was
such an informative episode.
Hilarious episode of the Now We Know
Now
Show.
We Know Show. That was brilliant. We do like folklore.
So that was Devonshire Folklore.
And what a great place it is.
Sounds like a nice retreat.
Are we
Definitely go down there for a spot of wild camping.
Are we going to revisit folklore in a future episode? I think we are.
I think we're going to revisit Devon sometime.
On location.
Maybe
with
we
the
should
Now We Know Show.
go on location.
We've got to stay a night. If we can.
Yes.
We're allowed to.
He's taking the hairy gloves with them just to,
Oh no.
to scare somebody.
No.
Don't want a hairy glove.
Just stop. Just stop.
Leave it there.
In a future episode of the folklore theme,
Yes.
where do we reckon we're going to visit next?
We've
a
been
big choice.
fairly well. We did Hertfordshire, which is kind of local to here. Maybe somewhere way out there. Maybe
Scotland, maybe?
somewhere in Scotland would be interesting.
Do Scotland?
Yorkshire.
Wales.
Yeah.
How about this? Why don't we get the audience to suggest in the comments?
Slap it in the comments. Listeners.
Where do you think we should do folklore?
Or if you know
next
of
episode?
any folklore tales, maybe we could go off of that and see where they're located. And see if
Any
there's
interesting
anything
stories, please let us know.
Wouldn't mind a field trip
else. Yes.
Oh, that'd be good.
Now we know show on location.
On the road,
with the hairy hands.
but not driving.
Not driving.
Or camping.
Or caravanning.
Just don't go anywhere. Just stay in the studio.
Anyway, I think that leads us to finding out about your
The hairy
word
groke.
of the week. The groke. Hairy groke.
Sorry.
Hairy groke of the week.
So, that brings us on to the word of the week.
Yay! Word of the week. Word of the
Well,
week.
we already did that. We already did that.
Word of the week.
Okay, fine.
Word of the week. Word of the week. Word of the week.
Word of the week.
So, the word of the week was groke.
Groke.
So,
Is that the noise that you make? You're getting tugged on by the hands.
if we could calm it down for a
He
second,
groped.
has anyone got
Groped
any theories as to what groke could mean?
Okay, groke. Okay, we're trying to stop laughing.
Groke.
Groke. So, is it that it's a mood? They're in a particularly groke mood.
I'm feeling particularly groped today.
Yes.
I think I'm going to lean towards it being like an object or something.
I think I'm going to go for it's a mood.
I'm going to go for object.
That somebody is groped off, or they're very grokey.
Just like that. No. Okay.
That's croaky.
Okay. Groke. This means to stare intently at someone who is eating in the hope that they will give you some.
To give you some. You're talking about the food.
It's a seductive look.
It's seductive.
Give me your hairy hands.
I'm groping you for food. You have to get how you say it. I'm groking you for food.
So, well done, listeners, if you correctly guessed what groke means.
It's to beg for food. Does that mean like when my Labrador's looking at me?
Yes, it used that as an example. It used
a dog is looking at you and groking you.
see a dog. Example: see dog looking at you.
Groking.
Yes, it's groking at you.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, I'm going to remember that. Next time I'm at McDonald's or somewhere like that, I'll say, oh, you groking me.
Oh,
Wait, mate, you groking me.
Security.
Security!
I feel uncomfortable in this
Groking me.
situation.
I feel
being
being groped.
Heavy groking.
Heavy groking going on. There should have a groking.
Groke warning. Yeah,
Signs up.
before a TV program.
No groking.
There you go.
This program contains heavy groking.
On the ratings before a movie contains groking.
Don't. Oh, that's brilliant. Well, at least we learnt a lot today, haven't we?
Yes.
And groking, yes. I'll remember that.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe to this channel and comment below any suggestions of topics or activities you'd like to listen to in future episodes. You can find the Now We Know Show podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music and Apple Podcasts. Check out the Zak Wylde Productions social media pages on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, or visit the Zak Wylde Productions website at www.zakwyldeproductions.com. Please get in contact. We'd love to find out how you're listening to us. So get in touch in the comments and don't forget to check out Zak Wylde Productions on Patreon to become an official ZWP patron today. So that's a big, hairy hands goodbye from Zak.
That's a croakingly goodbye from Buzz.
Oh, I was going to use that one. That's a...
He's gonna tug you off.
No, don't say that.
That's a tug off goodbye from Jack.
Sorry, listeners. Oh, dear.
Honestly, you come back for one episode.
Yeah,
No, I've got one.
I've
got one.
Go on.
It's a cling film poo goodbye from Jack.
No, that's worse. That's worse.
Okay, listeners, let's cut it there.
Now we know.
Now we know. Show. Now we know.
Grook.
Done.